Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Tonight we have one birthday that I'm aware of, and that is for Charles for 51 years, and Dennis will give him the cake. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Charles. Happy birthday to you. Keep coming back. This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Charles.
Thank you. My name is Charles, and I'm alcoholic.
Hi, Charles.
Oh gosh. There's so many people in this room. And, you know, I want to do justice to this wonderful experience of being sober for 51 years, being sober at all. Want to thank Dave for asking me to participate, share tonight. I used to hear the speakers say that, you know, in advance, and I knew it couldn't be true, that you'd be grateful for this moment. I've come to see that, yes, this is a grateful moment to be able to share my experience, strength, and hope on the program. For some reason or other, though, the alcoholic in me, you know, my defects want to, they're eating away on me. Well, generally peaceful. In the middle of the afternoon, I began to feel unruly and like maybe I'd rather go to Palm Springs or someplace, you know. And I put that aside. And you know, I'm up here to kind of discover tonight who I am at the moment, try to stay in the moment and share my experience as a sober person. Thank you, Dennis, for giving me a cake. I took a cake on Saturday night in Malibu, and my principal close friends, who, you know, I was kind of relying on to drive me up there and give me a cake, were depressed and unavailable. And so this 51-year-old martyr went off by himself, and was going to pick one of the crowd. And a newcomer sat down next to me, who had been on the program but had departed for a while, and was back with one day's sobriety. And I asked him if he'd give me the cake, and he got all nervous. Oh, this is a big deal and everything. It was just an AA thing. It seemed appropriate to do. But he asked me, he said, "How do you stay sober?" And I gave him our cliches, you know, sponsor steps and all this stuff. But it was very unsatisfying. It didn't come from me deeply because The truth of it is, I don't know. I don't know. But I gave it some thought, and people were very generous and made a lot of noise when I stood up. And I could remember, and I do want to start out by saying this, what I did remember. It might be helpful, and it has been helpful to me. It seems that either it was different a while ago, or I just haven't heard it lately, how much of sobriety has to do with miracle. We can be doing everything right, working the steps and having the sponsors and being in service. And I think we have seen where some people inexplicably go out. And I had heard, in my early days on the program, I had heard this woman. I only remember her this one particular night, but I remember her name was Blythe, and it was on Robertson in Beverly Hills. And she was talking about having been sober for a period of time, I don't know how long, but she was walking down Fifth Avenue and something grabbed her by the back of the neck and she went out again. And that was a harrowing thought, that can happen out of nowhere. Something can grab you by the back of the neck. And so putting that together with with the fact that miracle is very essential in the equation, and some of us have it, some of us get it, and some of us don't. It seemed, in my primitive thinking, and I still think of it today, that the object is to stay eligible for the miracle. I knew the miracle wouldn't follow me into the bar, and I knew the miracle wouldn't follow me into shady behavior, which I had been adept at. And if they said work with others, or if they said, make a 12-step call, I felt that the miracle was more apt to happen for me if I did those things. But what was, as I look back, the guiding thing was, because I'm superstitious, is to stay eligible for the miracle. And I was so grateful that this newcomer the other night asked me this, because it had recalled that nucleus or that nutshell to me, and I share it with you now if it can be helpful. I don't know, I'm overwhelmed by the number of people here and the 40 minutes ahead of me. Because, I know the routine is to what I was like and what happened, what I'm like now. And what I was like was so unformed and so long ago and so irrelevant. And yet, if I go there, as I probably will, I'll get lost there, and I'll tell you, drink by drink and everything. And I won't get to my sober experience, which is where it's mostly happened. I'm a very blessed man today. I am between miracles as far as economics are concerned, so I'm not doing well. But I'm a member of this marvelous movement, and trained by the wonderful experiences that you people have had and you've shared, and has given me the strength, and by our literature that I followed. And so I'm aware that I am at last the kind of person I wanted to be. I always wanted to be. Some years ago, I was in San Francisco with some rowdy friends, and there was a lot of drinking. But they went home and went to bed every night after the drinking, and so they were in good enough shape to drive home back to Los Angeles. And so I was sitting in their car, throwing up out the window, and they said rather impatiently, this one guy said, Chuck, why do you drink? And I said, and I thought with great wisdom, because I'm not the kind of person I want to be. And I thought if I had some Brooks Brothers button-down shirts and a trench coat and a few other things, I'd be the kind of person I wanted to be. It was all very materialistic that I was thinking. But, I wouldn't be anybody else today if I could be. I have so much to be grateful for, and I guess I better get to it and share some of it. I'm the product of a broken home. My father was a drinker and not attending to business, and my mother had to take her 4 kids and her 2 blouses and her 1 skirt and go to work. And she did that, and so my grandmother took over bringing us up. It was swell. I didn't have any problem with that. As I've grown up, as I have grown old, I have realized that I lost both parents in one swell foop, and that I compensated for that, I guess by stuffing my feelings, but because I didn't feel the loss. I went out and played. I had a good time. And when she married the first time, married a Russian doctor to take care of us kids, I stood in the hall and I heard him say that Chuck remembered his real father and that he wasn't going to bother to like me. He wasn't going to love me. He was making an exception of me amongst my brothers and sisters. And that seemed very reasonable, to me. I don't recall being hurt. I recall thinking I understand that point of view. And when my father came to Alcoholics Anonymous and got sober, and my mother divorced the Russian doctor, and she and my father were remarried, I stood in the dark hall one night and heard him say to her that since I was now adolescent and wasn't really accepting his dominion, that his love and feelings went for my brothers and sisters, but, in a limited fashion toward me. And again, I understood that. And I tell that story. I honestly really don't know, but except that I've all along been this person who doesn't feel that I count or that I have any enlightened rights or anything like that. As a kid, we had to move a lot, and I remember going to a new school, and Mrs. Sexsmith in the 6th or the 4th grade or whatever, I don't remember, but she put her, asked me to the front of the class to introduce me to the group, and I started to cry, and she asked me why I was crying, and I think, it's a kind of a joke that I say now. I said that I'm spiritually and bodily unlike my fellows. That's not exactly what I said. I said I'm not good enough. I just said it. It just came out. I'm not good enough. That was right, the nail on the head. And anyway, I say this it's not a pathetic story. In my view, it is to explain that I am a flawed person. I'm a person with defects of character, and who to this day misperceives things that go on, and think that I'm being abused when I'm not being abused, or whatever. I'm temperamental and emotional, and unless I have learned some techniques to sidestep those things, they would rule me. And I would find life not too pleasant. And in my days when alcohol was still a solution or something, and drugs that I didn't have any capacity to resist. I knew enough because I had gone to meetings with my father when he was getting sober in Balboa, and I saw that we were a crew of, though I wasn't part of it then, of happy people, of people who triumphed over adversity and who were very colorful and courageous and good-humored. And I would come home from those meetings and go out to my friends and tell them about the great things I'd heard at this AA meeting, as though I had seen a wonderful movie. I was really impressed. And so I knew getting kind of lost here. There's so much territory to cover, but I knew this wasn't the end of the road. I'm blessed that I knew in advance and was able in my early years. I was 25 when I came here in 1955. Because if I didn't know that it wasn't the end of the road, I might have resisted more. But I didn't. I could, early in life, I knew that something had me by the back of the neck. Once I was into what we now call speed, but it was diet pills, then I would, steal them from the people's cupboards and things like that. That was my gang. My gang taught me how to do that, and I was very heavily into pot and into drugs until it was absolutely crazy. I don't think I even want to go into the kind of activities there. It was a period of time when there was no social sanctions to drug taking, and so we felt very much beyond the pale. We were incredibly illegal and undesirable people in that period of time, and I was spooked. I was this nice kid brought up by Christian Scientists and had, and I respect Christian Science very much, but I feel that I kind of saw only part of the world through that very kind point of view that I was trained, and so I didn't know how if you flipped out, they dumped you on the hospital steps and left you, and things like that in my drug world. And so very early, I didn't stay in it very long. I flipped out and stopped taking drugs, but then alcohol really became my the means by which I could function. I couldn't go anywhere that I couldn't have some booze on the way, and when I got there. It would possibly be moderate to some of the stories that I've heard, but as I say, either something I got from the meetings that I knew this was not the frame of mind, this was not the person I wanted to be, or that I felt this hand at the back of my neck, or because I'm a writer and because I was a custodian of a talent and wanted nothing more than to be good at what I did. I'm lucky that I came to the program early. I'm further lucky that I came to the program at a time when, there were some remarkable people around. They thought of me as a pet. There was no people my age in AA at that point. I didn't see other people who were writers. I'm gay. I didn't see other people who were gay. I saw people who were much beyond me in years, and they, would say, "Keep coming back, Sonny," and laughing to themselves, like, here's this infantile drinker, and, I don't think anybody had much hope that I'd be around for very long. And people will say to me now, did you meet Bill Wilson? And in fact, my sponsors, one of my two sponsors, her story's in the book, and she was always talking about Ebby and Sister Ignatia, and Bill Wilson did come to the West Coast in the summertime and to garden parties and things, and I have some snapshots of him and my sponsor that I might have taken. I kind of don't think I did, but I am in a certain sense trying to buy into. I'm trying to, don't want to completely abandon the possibility that he and I had some very deep-seated conversations, and he thanked me for reminding him of a few things, but. It's possible that I could have met him, and it wouldn't have made any impression on me because everybody knew him, and I was not here. I was here that night. I was one day at a time. I kept coming back. I wasn't getting autographs, in order to prove this in my 51 years. And so, it doesn't matter whether I did meet him or not. It was at a time when people were still very connected to the beginning, to the founding, and who were exceedingly generous to me, and who had these brilliant stories. And I began hanging out with these people. And my father had cancer of the throat, and the medical profession had not given him much hope, and so he'd become a Christian Scientist as well. And we lived in a family now, going against the grain of many other members of the family and his workforce and everything. It was kind of unhappy situation as he went. It was in decline, but I was able to say to him that I backed what he chose to do, and so I was close to him and my mother during that time. It was my first year sober. I'm saying this because I think the adversity of that first year is also one reason why I might be still here. That I had to deal with things, or I don't know what I dealt with, but I had to show up, and I had these people who were just terrific to me, who would, try to answer my questions. And I'd call from the hospital or whatever, and they'd say, I don't have the answer, but you stay right there. And they would have somebody else, some enlightened other AA person, call me many times, not anyone that I knew. And I was really held above water, my head, excuse me. And so I look back then to this wonderful introduction that I had that might account for the fact that I'm still here, because I'm not as you all probably already noticed, a guru, a exemplary person. I couldn't tell you what page such and such is on. I couldn't even properly quote, I'm bodily and physically different from my fellows, But anyway, I look back and think of those times as remarkable. And so I think I'll get a little bit into, because I as I say, I've cut a lot out, but I'll probably get back to it if, anyway, I'm up here. I just made a date up here with higher power. I don't know what I'm going to be saying. And, I will or I won't. Who knows? And then I'll drive home and say, oh, I left out that point. I never told them what happened then, But in any case, in my I now was sober, and I could begin to give my time to my talents, such as they were. They weren't very developed at that time. Until then, I would set up with all the paraphernalia of writing and then just fall asleep over my martini, because writing did involve the drinking, all the accoutrements of, Paris in the 20s, it's how serious I was. But I, now sober, and with the believing, encouraging crowd of people that I would meet at meetings, or that I knew and were caring about my sobriety, I was able to complete work that began to get attention. And suddenly somebody wanted to do a play of mine in New York. Well, that's what I waited all my life for, And I'm driving home one night, they've sent the contracts and they want to do this, and suddenly I don't want to. Suddenly something dreadful had me by the back of the neck. I don't want to do this. I mean, I don't want to go to New York. They haven't figured out a way that you can go, because I don't travel. Oh, what I have left out is I'm agoraphobic. I mean, when I stopped taking the drugs, I stopped leaving the house, and would lay in this bed all day and all night listening to the radio. I mean, you can be crazy in a family. Nobody seemed to notice that, that something's wrong with Chuck, but and. But I found if I had a couple of drinks that I could go, as long as I didn't have to take a passenger, and I couldn't go as a passenger. And we can't go below Wilshire Boulevard, and we can go west, but on Sunset. We can't go east of Hillhurst. And don't say Riverside in my presence, because I'll begin to, And the thing is, they hadn't invented agoraphobia yet, so there was no word for it. And I have to tell you, I didn't mention it when I came to the program because who would know? I mean, it wasn't in the steps and it wasn't anywhere that I had these very weird compulsions. So I didn't speak of them for a long while. And so when suddenly the idea that New York came into the picture, it was, hey, no, I don't fly. I don't even take an elevator. And maybe a train would be all right, but I really, my mother used to say, a paddle in a tennis shoe is about the way you want to travel anywhere, And so anyway, I began putting these people through a lot of nonsense, like, well, I'm going to sign the contract and I'll bring it to the airport to drop it in at midnight. I did all these rituals I could do, but I couldn't do it. And so they decided they couldn't do my play without a bill of sale. And so here I was stuck in Hollywood, where I would not have come if I hadn't been born here. And people in the industry thought these plays were kind of interesting, and so I didn't have to go anywhere. And so I began to get some activity in show business. But they also wanted signatures, and I don't write my name on anything. I mean, these are the rules, and. And so they didn't like it, but they might give me a check for $18,000 and want something back from that. And I made concessions. I can't believe I'm telling you this, but this is happening. And I'm now maybe 2 or 3 years sober. I would sign it in a locked car and show them through the window that I had signed it, which was some kind of promise in the future we'd be able to work this out and that my heart was in the right place. But I was running things. And do remind me, as time is when my time begins to get short, that the running things you have to tell me. I mean, I have to bring that, because this is the point I'm moving to. I was sober, and I was cooperative, and I did everything, but I was still this panic-stricken person who, let's kind of do it my way, I did everything your way, legitimately, steps and everything, but I was still hanging on to something, I was still picking up the paperclip off the street or the hair on your shoulder, following some, what is the word that I use, irrational authority. I was following irrational authority. And but I was able to write, and they seemed to like my work, and we moved slowly ahead. And because I had the program, I was able to make some headway in my problems. I now realize that there was about half a dozen people in my family who had this. We now know something about these obsessive compulsive things, and that they run in families. And I do remember when I was little, my mother wouldn't go in a tunnel or on a bridge, but she was nice, and so that wasn't real important. She and my father might argue about that, but it wasn't a big deal. And then I had someone else in my family who saved. When you eat an artichoke and you pull it this way, she would put it in her purse rather than. So, I say I'm taking off every stitch for you, because there'll probably be a half a dozen people who'll tell me, "Oh, me too," but I'm trying to tell you, what went on for these 50 years. But you know what? I was here. I kept showing up. I kept coming back. These cliches that these seems like brilliant Sermon on the Mount things, that we have around our rooms that tell us, easy does it and everything. Those are brilliant, brilliant, brilliant things. And I superstitiously was behaving, trying to stay on the good side of the miracle. And so I began to go on elevators, and I could, in certain buildings, and I could sign my name, but not on Fridays. So I began to make some headway in the movies, and I'm trying to think if I'm not leaving out anything important, but they really thought I was good at what I did, and I think I was. because I knew there was a certain amount of realism that had come because I was on this program, and I was somebody at some meeting when I was young said there's a difference between pain and drama. Boy, did I hate hearing that. I mean, it took out half of my experience, But I believed it, and I knew it to be true, and so I was less likely to get into drama thereafter. Or I would hear, something else will come to mind, but I would hear these things, and they were so true that they did improve. I became an evolving person. It says in the book, and this is a really rough paraphrase, but we do these things, the suggested things, when we come here, at first because we ought to, or we have to. Because we have to. Everybody tells us we have to. And then as we're around a while, we do them because we ought to, we know better, and we ought to. But we end up doing them because we love the effect it has in our lives. And you get to that stage, I mean, you're not every day. I mean, you got to have your temperaments and your tantrums, but you sometimes don't even have to stop and think. Another line I like very much is, "It is more efficient." In the 11th step in the pages, I think it's 87. That way, by turning our will and our life over to God, it is more efficient. Well, I believe that's fantastic, a way to be more efficient. When I'm not temperamental and crazy and everything, I make that choice voluntarily to be more efficient. And so I began to function, and finally, for this person who couldn't go east of Hillhurst, this is a bit boastful, but I directed a motion picture, and I made a deal. I signed a pile of contracts as tall as I am. I invited everybody in the team in to see me do it. But I did send my secretary out to buy a certain kind of pen, and it had to be blue ink. But I did it, and so this very crooked, crazy person with these principles and this keep showing up and everything made this movie. 80 people were on the team, and anyway, so did the movie. And then after about 3 years, it was a troubled movie. After the first year or so, they kicked me off of it. They decided they changed the name of the game and wanted a 2-hour, a 2-hour youth-oriented movie out by summer, when up until then it had been our award winner or whatever. And I say this not because of, it's colorful and nice, though I think it's true. It's magic that, we get sober and we get prosperous. I mean, I see it all the time. It doesn't happen so much for the old-timer, but it happens for the newcomer a lot. Things just begin working for you. I mean, they did for me in my early days. I don't know why they slow down when after a while, but I will find that out one of these days. And so anyway, they took it away from me. And I work and live in a town when you're hot, and when you're not, you're not. And people would look up and down in the hall before they'd speak with me to see if they were caught talking to a has-been or someone who was in trouble or something. It was, I say that only because it does amaze me that I never thought I would drink. I never thought of drinking during that time, and I lost something that means everything to me. It was the happiest summer of my life. I was doing what I wanted. They believed so much in me, they gave me everything. Nobody gave me any trouble at all. Though I made them angry. I mean, and I hear now they said, okay, he's got us by the balls now, but when we can, we'll pull his teeth. And they pulled my teeth. I mean, my insecurities that I hadn't dealt with made this a rough ride for a lot of people. Had I been going to meetings regularly and in the manner that I go to them now, I would have had a different way to work this out. But I I was naive, and I'd come to the program with the view that I wasn't going to become a professional person in recovery. I mean, recovery wasn't going to be the only thing about me, that I was going to re-enter the mainstream of life. I certainly wasn't going to know any of you personally and spend any time with you, This was something I was doing in the early part of the evening. I don't do myself justice by saying that, but at the same time, AA was a little separate from my career. And so while they are scoundrels, and can't tell you otherwise, I am also the author of my experience, and I did enough damage to have justified the fact that I was now out of gas as far as the motion picture business was concerned. And that was a time when I began to learn more and more about the program. I didn't voluntarily run back to the program and say, okay, teach me the wisdoms, here. I met someone, a newcomer. I don't apologize to say, but he and I lived together for a number of years. And as a newcomer, I had to show up in a lot more meetings than I did beforehand. And people would ask me things that I didn't really know about. And I began to grow. And I think, do the things which I might have done when I first came in, but somehow was given a pass because the people were so permissive and loving toward me. And so I began to grow. I began to understand the nature of the inventory. I had done it before, but very superficially, began doing more and more inventory. At any challenging thing I did, I like to say that sobriety's in the wrist. When you sit down and you write and you begin to find out who you are. And at first it doesn't matter who you are. At first it matters to get sober, to follow the suggestions and get sober. But as you go on, it's nice to. I think it's important to know, because alcohol is just a symptom, who you are and what's making you tick. And I began by having rough experiences as a sober person to tick, to find out, who it is, why I was this way. For instance, it came to be a time when I was going to be evicted. I didn't have a lot of money. I couldn't go on to the next apartment, and the people were wrong in their evicting me. And I would share this at meetings, that I'm being evicted. People would say, "Oh yeah, that happened to me too." Well, I could see why it would happen to you, but it really was not good for me. And then I would be talking about it at meetings until finally I began to see that, I felt awful. Somebody's evicting you. It's like your government doesn't like you, and your mother says, listen, can't be your mother anymore, get lost. And I realized, well, geez, that's the way I always, through inventory, that's the way I've always felt. I've been evicted from the very start here. This is what the baggage I carry. And then I thought, I got to the next step. Well, why are they evicting me? Well, they're evicting me because we had termites, and I asked them to do something about it, and they didn't right away. And I got rough. I said, yeah, I've got to do this. I'm going to go to the authorities or whatever. And they kicked me out. And I realized, I suppose if I was going to meetings and I was really talking to everybody about these things in detail, I would know there was another way of doing this, that I could diffuse my alcoholism that created the I am the author of my experience. I created the antagonism to me that they wanted to evict me, and now I was a victim. And it was so logical. It was, there's another phrase I like very much in our literature. I don't know where it is, but it's to translate a mental conviction into a emotional result or something like that. That the things that we know, when we know them, and therefore they work in our lives, and they change what we're doing. This is a very tangible program. And so this eviction situation was really vital, and I learned so much. I learned that, that's the reason they kicked me off the movie. I was the author of that experience, and had I known better, I would have done differently. And so life is, for me, a learning experience, and I see I'm almost out of time, so I've got to go quickly to say that a couple of years ago, my sister died, who had been ill with emphysema, and I had spent time with her during her illness, and her breathing was very labored. And when she died, my breathing became very labored and very difficult. And I thought at first it was my form of grief. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I couldn't afford it, whatever it was, and I knew that if I went to the doctor and he said anything that I didn't like, I'd just change doctors. So I avoided this, and I was gasping and gasping and gasping. And one night, a year ago, last November, I was at the Malibu meeting, and people were commenting on my color and the fact that I was gasping and everything. And I went home and I called my friend Dennis, and I was at a loss at what to do. I had been reading reading the book intensely. I'm leaving something else out, but I'd had an attack of alcoholism again the year before, when suddenly I was in a state of such fear and panic that I couldn't understand it, and the doctors were recommending not antibiotics, but antidepressant, and I don't do that. And I know that if that hadn't changed, I would have to have drank. And I could read where Bill had his problems with depression and whatever. And I was in a terrible state. And when I was going to meetings, and I walked up to a meeting, and someone from a car said, "Is there a meeting back there?" And I said, "Yes." And I went and sat down. And he came in and sat down in a chair in front of me. And I said, "No, these damn newcomers, they're in my way. I can't see the speaker." And he asked me a question or something afterwards, and pretty soon I was driving him to meetings, or he was driving me. I didn't have a car. And I saw, again, the magic of the program. We've talked about service, service to others. And I used to think we do that because we're nice people, and it's a way of paying back. No, it's a way of saving your life, because this thing that had me by the back of the neck then went away, and there was no drugs involved and nothing, but it went away. And so I was used to, at that point, really reading the literature and trying to find out more about it, but nothing was happening. But this night, after talking to Dennis, I suddenly realized I'm not running the show. As though I'd never heard that phrase before. I'm not running the show. It was 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and raining, windy, and I got in the car and drove to emergency, and they started doing things to me, and they told me I had to have quadruple bypass. And as I say, the Carole Eastman I know would have run and changed doctors and whatever. But the concept of I'm not running the show, which I think is the most delicious thing I've ever learned on the program. That's why I'm so happy that I'm here tonight, because it's come to me. I'm not running the show, as though I had never heard it before. It's a driving force to me now. I can run the show at a moment's notice, but they had to do a lot of things. They put a pipe down my mouth and asked me questions, how I was feeling, and all I knew was I could say I'm an alcoholic. My name is Charles, and only to me, because nobody could hear any of it. And so I was 5 months in the hospital. They had to put the pipe down one second time, and whatever. But I can almost recommend to you all a quadruple bypass. I am so rejuvenated because the program was intensely real and present for me in a way that I had never experienced it before, and has remained so. And then in almost like a fairy tale. You have to believe me, it's true. Dennis will testify to this. I hadn't worked for 20 years. I hadn't made any money in my business at all. And some people in Memphis decided they wanted my services and paid me while I was in the hospital, waiting for if and when I got out, and if and when I could still write. And my niece moved me from Camarillo down here to Culver City to be nearer her. And my work life is better, is terrific. You wouldn't notice it because you don't know me, but I had lost about 40 pounds in the process. And, I'm somebody. It was the day I got out of the hospital. I had my 50th anniversary in AA. So, as I say, I wouldn't want to be anybody else. I mean, I watch all my friends on Oscar night and think, it's okay, it's good for them. But I was at a meeting, the martyrdom was here. I'd been asked to speak that night, and I realized, what a fabulous member of AA you are. You're going to on the night of the Oscars, when you would be justified to stay home, you're going to go to an AA meeting sparsely attended because they're all watching TV, and do the right thing. Well, I did, that's, and that's who I like. I like to be me. I think it's probably time, right? Is it? Okay, I left out so much, come back next week. But thank you for sharing my birthday with me.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. And if that shows up, the gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.